Hey everybody, this is Taylor Moss here from Everything Under the Sun, and today I have an awesome thing to show you guys. I'm going to be showing you guys how to use the Blender 2.58 fluid simulation, and yeah, let's get started. Alright, so if you just get in here, you'll be in your default scene, and you can erase this cube. So the first thing you need to do when you're doing a fluid simulation is you'll need multiple things. You'll need a domain, which is essentially the container or glass or something like that your fluid would be in. Then you'll need a fluid, obviously, and then if you want, you can add obstacles. So I'm going to show you how to do all of those things today. Alright, so the first thing, we'll just add a cube here and just scale it way up here and press Z to go to wireframe mode. And this will be your domain. So if you go over here to the physics tab, make sure you're under Blender Render, not Blender Game. Click fluid and change the type of fluid to the domain. Now it's going to look kind of weird right away, but just take your slider and drag it back to 0. So that will correct that for our testing. Next, add another cube, and this is what will be our fluid. So if we just look around here, you can see it's in the middle, so we'll scoot it back a bit. And that's alright. Alright, so this will have to click fluid and actually make our fluid. Oddly enough, all of the fluid settings are in the domain rather than the actual fluid, so if you go back over to the domain, you'll see a ton of settings. The resolution is basically the main thing that makes it look better or worse. When I'm just trying to get basic shapes down, like where the water is going to go, what it's going to do, I have it really low, about 20 or so. And another thing that's incredibly important is the start and end times. This is start 0 and 4 seconds, so you would think it would go for 4 seconds at whatever your frame rate is, and then it would stop. What it actually does is it'll stretch this 4 seconds over however long your composition is. So in this instance, our composition is 250 frames long, and if we are moving at 24 frames a second, it's going to stretch those 4 seconds over almost 11 seconds. So first off, I'm going to change this to 25 and then go back here and I'm going to change this from start to end to 10. So now the 10 seconds of fluid simulation will also be 10 seconds in the Blender itself. There's also a few other options you have here. In the domain world, you have viscosity presets like honey or water or oil or something like that, or if you know the base and exponent, you can set that yourself. I just like to use water because I haven't had a purpose to simulate honey or oil yet. Next, you can turn off subdivision or turn on subdivisions to make anything smoother. And domain particles. This it's a little more complicated than I'm going to show in this video, but that is basically for water droplets or mist on a window or something similar to that. Alright, so with the final as 20 and the preview is 20, we can just hit bake here, and up here is where the loading bar is. You will see it looks like it's not actually showing anything, but it is working. So now that it's done, you can either scrub or press Alt-A to watch the animation, and that's what it's looking like right now. It's really low resolution, which is why it doesn't look that great, but we'll just turn this up to, let's say, 50. Okay? And this time we're going to change the DisplayPort mode to final instead of the default preview. So as you can see, just turning that up to 50 opposed to 20 is more than doubling our render time. For anything you want to be a final composition or a final product, I would recommend doing something in the high 150s, maybe low 200s. I did try something in the 400 range, but it took almost the entire day and still didn't even finish. I had to quit halfway through. So I wouldn't recommend going that far. Alright, so as this buffers, we can actually view it real time. We don't have to wait for it to finish to watch. So we can watch, see that looks a lot better, but one of the things we should do is probably add some sort of obstacle. First thing, I'm going to scale this up just a bit so there's a little more water, and then I'll add myself a UV sphere. Now this UV sphere, since it's going to be our obstacle, needs to have some sort of collision for the water to detect. So make sure you're under the physics tab and click on fluid and change the type to an obstacle. You can change the slip amount and all those type of things, but for now I'm just going to leave those as the default. I'm going to make sure it's underneath here. And in fact, just for the purpose of this, I'm going to duplicate it a few times and just move those around. Alright, so now we have 3 sphere obstacles and a much greater mass in our water. So if we take a look over here in the viewport, and we will now select our domain as we have before and hit bake, and it actually is probably going to take just a little bit longer than it would have originally, because 1, now we have more fluid, and 2, now we have some sort of obstacles for it to actually interact with. So if we swing around here and get to a better angle, we can still go along as it goes, and you can see that's a lot more water. You can see it interacting with those spheres there, and you can see it's looking pretty nice. Another thing that's incredibly useful to do is give it a texture or a material. The water material is one of the easiest ones you can make. Make sure you put it on the domain rather than the fluid. Again, it's really weird why it's always the domain that you're editing rather than the fluid. It kind of gets confusing as to what you're actually editing. So if you go over to the materials, just turn up the brightness on the white and make the whitest white you possibly can. Turn diffuse and specular and shading, twirl all those up. Your make sure you're on transparency, and your ray trace, you're going to have a 0.1 for your alpha, and the IOR is the index of reflectability, or it could be the index of refraction. I don't remember which one it is, but that is going to be 1.333 for water. You can find a list online of what these actually are if you're not sure. And then enable mirror transparency. Now this right here is probably gonna what you want to do for murky water. If you want to do anything like that, you can actually add a tint right there. But I like to do around 9 for really reflective. The Fresnel I like to put up at about a 1.35, and that is all you need for a nice looking water material. So now if we buffer through here, right here would probably look like it'd be a nice place to check what we're doing. So whenever I do water, I always turn off shadows in the shading. I think it looks a lot better, and I also always do a sun. It makes everything a lot brighter. So if we click on our camera and press 0 to see if that's a good angle, that looks pretty good, and we'll press P or F12 to render, and you can see it looks a lot like water, but it's a little too jaggedy. I forgot that we would need to click on the domain and make that smooth. I'm also going to make both of these circles here smooth, and press F12. As you can see, it's looking a lot better. It's looking a lot like water. You can still see these jagged edges, and you can tell it's not perfect yet. The main way to fix that is just go into here. You can turn up the subdivisions on the domain boundary, and you can also rebake it at a higher resolution. But that is really the only things that you can change, and if you just keep turning this up, I can assure you it's just going to look so nice. I'm gonna hit bake here real quick on this after I turned up the subdivisions and the final thing just for a minute. I'm gonna show you guys a type of look you can achieve with a higher number. This is around 150. I did it earlier today. As you can see, it looks really real, a lot like water. It's really easy to do, and yeah, that's basically all there is to the fluid simulation. As you can see, it does take quite a while. Now that I upped that, it's only to about here. It's not necessarily how much water you're doing, it's how detailed and how nice the water looks. So right here, looks like we got a frame here that looks decent enough, if it'll let me go to it. Alright, so now that we got that, you can just cancel the fluid simulation, and we'll just render that out real quick to see what that's looking like. And it's looking pretty good. It looks a lot like water, and that's basically how you get the fluid simulation to work in Blender. It's really easy. It's really fun to mess around with. The only downside is that it does take quite a long time to render. So hope you guys learned some. If you guys have any questions or suggestions for future videos, just let us know in the comment section below. Thanks.